Hey everybody, Dylan here from Portugal, the Simple Life podcast, and I have one question for you. Are you as excited and as ready as we are for season 4? And with a brand new episode comes a brand new studio, a fresh new look, but some things still have to stay the same. I'm joined every week by amazing guests as we share our love for Portugal. And we're delighted that you are with us every step of the way. So with that in mind, please enjoy our latest episode of a brand new season. And as we say in Portugal, sejas bem-vindo, welcome to the Simple Life.
You know, cuisine is such a part of the way people nurture each other in Portugal.
Yes.
It's part
how they
of
show love.
I would say that Portugal is a very nurturing culture.
Yeah.
And cuisine is a big part of that.
Food is the Portuguese love language.
Yeah, they say I make fun of them because they say that there are 350 different ways to make codfish or something like that.
Yeah.
So I say that cod, is the Portuguese Kama Sutra. It's like 350 ways.
Portugal.
Our vegetables are like rock stars.
Literally, Portugal is a small Disneyland for grown-ups.
I think that Portugal is like my geographic soulmate.
It's hard to explain what it is because it's a feeling.
And when I went there, I absolutely fell in love with Portugal.
I wanted to feel the crunchiness.
Portugal, the Simple Life podcast.
Portugal, the Simple Life podcast.
And we're here on his podcast, Portugal Simple Life.
Portugal, the Simple Life podcast, your insider's perspective into Portugal. And our latest episode starts right now. Welcome back, or welcome to another episode of Portugal, the Simple Life. And I'm really honored and happy to be joined here by Richard Zimler. Richard, boa tarde. Thank you for being on the podcast. How are you?
I'm pretty good. It's a sunny day here in the Minho. We're up at our country house, and I'm feeling relaxed, and I've watered the garden, so everything is good.
Very nice, very nice. Yeah, we're recording this on a Friday. It's always nice to look forward to a weekend in Portugal, for sure.
Yeah, and it's nice when we have a day of sun, even though I know we need the rain, but the sun makes me feel happier and calmer and better.
For sure. Rain can wait a little bit. Yeah, for sure. Richard, why don't you start off telling us a little bit about yourself?
Well, I was born in the suburbs of New York on January 1st, 1956. My dad was always angry with me that I wasn't born a day earlier because he could have deducted me from his taxes for 1955. So we got off to a good start, me and my dad. Okay. I did all my schooling at the public schools in New York, mostly good. I liked pretty much every subject. I was a good athlete, so I liked art and math and history. I wasn't a difficult student in that regard. I wasn't the greatest student in the world, but I was okay. And let's see. And then university. Well, I decided I hated the New York winters, the snow, waiting out for the bus in freezing temperatures. So I went to school in the South at Duke University. Mm-hmm. Where I studied comparative religion because I'm a child of the 60s and I was always interested in Buddhism and Hinduism and Sufism, and I wanted to know what all that was about. And I studied music too because I played classical guitar back then in another life. And so those were my two main subjects. And then after that, Duke is in a working class, pretty difficult city, at least it was back then. Now it's become all gentrified and urban. And I wanted to go someplace more cosmopolitan. And so I moved out to the San Francisco Bay Area. And I also wanted to experiment a bit with my sexuality and see what attracted me, what didn't attract me. And San Francisco was the place to be. So that's where I went. And it was great. San Francisco pre-AIDS was, it's a beautiful city, and liberation was in the air, and people were happy, and people were experimenting with their clothing and their lifestyle and who their friends were, and so it was a wonderful time to be there. I knew Harvey Milk, was friends with him. It was just, and San Francisco's not so big. It's not like New York or Los Angeles or London. So it's like a community. So I enjoyed that sense of community and belonging for the first time in my life. And after that, I fell in love with a Portuguese scientist from Mozambique, which was a Portuguese colony, in
Yeah.
December of 1978. So we've been together for 47 years. And so
Amazing.
that really changed my life completely because here I am all this time later with the same guy and we're still in love and we moved to Portugal eventually and so we've made our life in different places and along the way I started writing. I always knew I wanted to be a writer, but I didn't have the confidence to do so. So I skipped a step back in 82. I went back to university and got a master's degree in journalism at Stanford because I lacked the confidence and I needed to learn the techniques of writing, how you engage your reader, sentence structure, alliteration, how you put poetry into prose. And so that was a good experience for me, Stanford. And then I started working for different companies and doing corporate journalism and going freelance. And then in 1990, everything changed. We moved to Portugal. And
Okay.
so that was a pretty radical step.
Yeah, I mean, the last 10 years, a lot of Americans have moved here. You moved way, 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 way before it was popular. What, how did that happen? Tell us about that, how that all took
Well,
place. Did you know anything about Portugal before moving here?
yes, I had been to Portugal every other year from 1980 to 1990 because Alex, my husband,
Because of
my
your husband?
future husband, was teaching in a summer school. He's a scientist, and there was a
Yeah,
science summer school, and he would teach, and I would go for 2 to 3 weeks. I didn't
gotcha.
speak Portuguese. I knew enough to say, I want a cup of tea or a cup of
Yes,
coffee, or the weather is lousy, when's it going to stop raining?
yes.
Um, and so I knew Portugal a bit. It was kind of a shock for me to tell you the truth because Portugal in 1980, we had just had the Democratic Revolution
That's right.
6 years earlier. So
That's
we
right.
had that aspect of the country where people were calling each other comrade and we wanted to move forward and yet the country was still mired in the results of a 50-year fascist dictatorship. So
Yeah.
Porto, where we moved, and where I would spend a few weeks each summer was a dark city. It was, there were no outdoor cafes back then.
Mm.
People were poor. I mean, it was the first time I had seen 10 and 11-year-old boys working on construction sites. First time I'd seen
Wow.
10 and 11-year-old girls with maids' uniforms on, cleaning other people's houses.
Yeah.
If you'd go to the post office, sometimes you'd see someone receive a package with just making an X because they couldn't read or write.
Yeah. Yeah.
30%
And didn't
of
know
the
how to sign.
population couldn't read or write back then.
Yeah.
So, and just things that will seem superficial, but that really aren't. Like there was no dentistry. So you'd see a
Mm.
handsome man or a beautiful woman, and then he or she would open their mouth to
Smile.
talk, and it was like Roman ruins. And it was heartbreaking, really
Yeah.
heartbreaking.
Yeah.
Beautiful people who deserved a better life, a country that doesn't give its people the tools to read and write at the minimum, and good health care is not doing its job.
Yeah.
Sorry, it's a failed country. And so that was really hard for me to get used to that, and of course the language difficulties. And at the same time, I was trying to, write a first novel. So, and teach. Oh, excuse me, I should say I was employed. I needed a job. So I was employed to teach at the journalism school. And the director of the school said to me, you can teach in English, no problem. So I prepared all summer to give my classes in English. I got there the first day and I started talking. Hi, my name is Richard Zimler, and we're going to use different methodologies to discuss the content of journalism, to analyze our work. And they didn't understand a word I was saying.
Oh my goodness.
And so I panicked. I had to switch to a mixture of Portuguese and English right away. I sometimes say I made more mistakes in Portuguese than anyone in the history of the country because I had to give these classes in a mixture. And so it was really hard, really embarrassing. It's a small country, so I still run into my first and second year students back then, and I'm always so embarrassed. And they're like, no, you were phenomenal. You were great because you were so different from all our other teachers.
For sure. It must have been a completely different experience for them.
Yeah, I mean, this fairly young in the 30s, I was in my 30s then, professor who didn't, I wore a tie and a jacket then because I wanted to distinguish myself from them, but who could barely speak Portuguese and who was introducing a new topic into the whole Portuguese curriculum. I was the only person in Portugal teaching how we can use statistical analysis to get a good idea of what we are writing and what other people are writing. Like if you wanted to discuss something simple, the last election in America, Kamala Harris, Donald Trump. What characterized that election? Who got more coverage? Was the coverage positive, negative? What subjects were focused? Was it healthcare? Was it anti-immigration? There are ways to do that. And so I was the only person in Portugal discussing that at the time.
Amazing. Amazing. And I would imagine coming not, 6 years after one of the longest dictatorships in the history of the world, seeing somebody from another country, let alone America, you must have looked like an alien to them, like it must have been interesting.
I did. They would, the Portuguese stare, not so much anymore, but foreigners were, few and far between in a city like Porto, which didn't get much tourism. And so, people would stare at me all the time because I don't look Portuguese, or at least what their idea of Portuguese looks like. And it took me a while to adjust to that and understand they don't mean anything bad. It's almost like a childlike curiosity of this alien who's landed on our planet. And, nobody spoke English back then except for a few very well-educated, colleagues of Alex in science and at the university. And so it was really hard from the linguistic point of view. Also, I had to learn all new ways of thinking because I was kind of stupid. I thought, well, if I just learn the language, I'll understand everybody pretty perfectly because we all think alike about about the main topics, about sex and friendship and politics and, the importance of gardening and, even little things, and it's not true.
Yeah.
People from different countries think completely differently about all the major topics and all the minor topics.
Yeah, that must have been interesting because you've come from, you mentioned how you went from New York to San Francisco where you had this freedom to explore and express and try things and experiment and then you've come to a place where none of that was allowed, not even speaking to each other on the street. What was that like? I mean, it must be, it's difficult to fathom when you think of Portugal today.
Absolutely. It was very daunting and hard. And I had told Alex, who's Portuguese from Mozambique. So for him, it was very different too, because Mozambique was a Portuguese colony in East Africa.
That's right, yeah.
And I know this will sound strange to many people who are viewing this, but Mozambique was more cosmopolitan than Lisbon because of the influence of South Africa.
Yeah.
So Alex grew up in the capital of Mozambique, which was then called Lourenço Marques. It's now Maputo.
Yeah.
And, he had a childhood much like an American kid. He could wear shorts and go bicycling and his parents didn't worry about him and you didn't have to go to church. And, it was a little... And there was South Africa. So, the Beatles came in and the Rolling Stones, Portugal, continental Portugal was still, kids should dress very properly and we go to mass on Sunday. And so it was hard for him too. I said to him, I can pretty much put up with anything for 2 years. But if after 2 years I'm depressed and I don't think I can make it, we have to move somewhere. And it can be Rome or Paris. It doesn't have to be back to the States. So we made a deal. And after 2 years, we weren't depressed. I mean, it was really so hard. I mean, teaching was hard. The hardest part for me was making friends. I couldn't make friends because I didn't know how the Portuguese start a friendship. In America, we're very informal. You meet someone at a museum, you get to talking about a painting, and that person says, hey, you know what? We're having a barbecue this afternoon. You want to come over? that could never happen in Portugal.
Yeah.
Not even today. I will tell you the truth. Not even today. But back then, absolutely impossible a foreigner being invited to a Portuguese home for a barbecue or a dinner or whatever. And so the hardest part for me was I felt extremely isolated. I had Alex and a couple other people I could talk to, but no close friends. And I didn't even know how to make a close friend.
Yeah.
And so I counted on letters. There was no internet back then. Counted on letters to friends.
No FaceTime.
And, even phone calls were difficult. When we first came to Portugal in 1980, if you wanted to call the States or England, I suppose, you had to call an operator and set it up. And they would say, okay, at 4 p.m., we'll put the call through to you.
Yeah.
And so, and people, and this will sound amazing, but back in the 1980s, if you bought an apartment and you wanted a phone, it could take 2 years. 2 years to get a phone installed.
Wow.
Oh, yes. Wow. I moved here with my little tiny Apple computer, and I needed a ribbon for the printer. There was no place in Portugal to buy a ribbon for my Apple printer. Nowhere. Wow. I had to write to Apple in Silicon Valley and say, a letter. It took 3 weeks to get there, 3 weeks to come back. Where do I buy a ribbon? And they said, well, we're sure you can get one in Amsterdam from our headquarters there. So that's where I got my ribbon.
Oh, my goodness.
You can't imagine how isolated this country was in the 1980s and the early 1990s. It was like I used to send letters to friends from the land that time forgot, because it was like America in the 50s. People smoking in elevators, people smoking in hospitals. Okay, you'd go to the hospital to see, we had a friend who was a surgeon, go to see him, and the doctors are smoking in the hallways in the hospital. I know maybe it sounds superficial to a lot of people, but it's just saying, women's rights as well. Alex's mom, she needed her dad's permission to open a bank account. That's not so long ago. That's before the revolution. And so it was just, for me, it was like going back in time to an episode of Perry Mason or something like that. It was just, it was wild and very, very, very hard. Sometimes I look back and I think, well, I must have been a lot stronger than I thought, because I survived and I thrived. And things changed for me, I have to say. Things changed for me when I published my first novel here, because it was a huge success.
Okay.
So suddenly, this will sound, I don't want to denigrate. It's not Portugal, it's everywhere in the world. If you're not known and people think you're just a pipsqueak, they may not treat you so well. But suddenly I have the #1 bestseller, and people who would never have talked to me before are suddenly talking to me. And that was a strange phenomenon too, because I had to get used to the idea that they're not really interested in me. They're interested in the me who's now becoming slowly a public figure.
Yeah. Yeah. At what point did this start to change?
Well,
because there's obviously something that's kept you here.
Yeah. Well, I kept here because Alex had his work. He was starting a new institute for the research into human genetic diseases and immunology, and it was really important to him. Yeah. And sometimes we do things because our partners, husbands, wives, kids need to do them.
For sure.
And it was so important for him that I'd made every effort to stick with him. And we're in love, so you stick with people. And what else was I going to do? I mean, I was sort of at a dead end in my life. What saved me was writing my first novel. Mm-hmm. When I'm writing a novel, I go into kind of like a trance. And this was a historical novel, The Last Kabbalist to Lisbon, set in Lisbon during an anti-Semitic riot in which 2,000 forcibly converted Jews were murdered. Historical fact that no one knew in Portugal. No one except a handful of specialists. Yeah. So I felt like this overwhelming, absolute necessity to research the book well, write a great book, and force the Portuguese to recognize this crime against humanity. And so what saved me was I spent a year researching the book and 2 years writing it. So for 3 years, I had a place to be. I had a
Mm.
home.
Mm.
My home was the last Kabbalist of Lisbon.
Yeah.
And even if things were hard for me at the university teaching, even if I didn't have good friends, I had a home. And it happened to be in Lisbon in the 16th century, and that was great. And that's what you learn as a writer. I think if you're committed to your writing, you discover that your novel, for however long it takes, a year, 5 years, that's your home. It's almost like self-hypnosis. You are there. You're imagining the characters there. They live inside you. You hear their dialogues. You speak to them. And whatever else is happening in your life, good or bad, for the hours that you're writing, that's where you're supposed to be. You are exactly where you're supposed to be.
At what point does Portugal begin to feel like home for you?
Yeah. Well, it started to feel like home when I got much better at the language. Okay. If you don't speak Portuguese, now in 2025, you can be fine.
Completely different, yeah.
It's not a problem.
Yeah.
Waiters, taxi drivers, teachers, everybody knows enough English to help you. And a lot of the kids, under 40, let's say, I call them kids under 40, they speak English well enough to have a really, you want to talk about existentialism, you want to talk about politics in France, you can. They're great. And they sing, because we don't dub our programs. They hear English. It's fabulous. They have good ears. They can sing in English like native speakers. It's fabulous. Congratulations to the Portuguese on that. But back then, learning the language was absolutely essential to me because otherwise I would be restricted to a very small community of expats, and I didn't want that. I wanted to be Portuguese. I wanted to participate in the country. I wanted to become a citizen and vote and have my voice heard and my book sold. And I wanted to be able to do interviews with great journalists like you in Portuguese.
Yeah.
And so I made an extraordinarily committed effort to, learn really well, to speak past, present, future, conditional, not make mistakes, get a wide vocabulary, and I did it. It wasn't overnight. Took me, I would say, 4 or 5 years to be able to give really good classes in Portuguese. It took me another 4 or 5 years to be super fluent, and it's taken me all these years, 35 years, to gain a really, really big vocabulary. Not as big as in English, but I'm completely fluent in Portuguese. I give 95% of my school talks in Portuguese, my interviews, my podcasts. I write in Portuguese. I publish my children's books. I've got 8 children's books. I write them in Portuguese. And that changed everything for me because suddenly people can talk to me like, wow, this American guy.
Yeah.
He doesn't look like us, but he speaks Portuguese.
What was the response like when that happened?
People in Portugal love it.
Yeah.
Love it when you can speak a little Portuguese. They, the Spanish come here. Sorry to criticize the Spanish, but
they don't want to. Yeah, we know.
No, they don't want to. They come in and they say "Buenos dias, yo quiero," and they don't even learn how to say thank you in Portuguese. They say gracias, not obrigado. And sometimes I was just in a restaurant with somebody, and they 2 Spanish people ordered something, and I looked at the cashier, and we looked at each other, and I said, they don't even learn how to say obrigado. And we just laughed, it's like, that's the way it is. And so the Portuguese love it. If you come to Portugal, thank you, hello, goodbye, learn 10 expressions, they will be thrilled.
We've seen now, obviously you've followed what's happening in America closely. It's also probably not the country that you left. I would imagine you wouldn't be in a rush to go back there. But you've also seen Portugal change. How, for good and for bad, have you seen Portugal change in all these years that you've been here?
Well, until very recently, I would say almost all the changes were good.
Yeah.
For instance, now women are 50% or more of the students in law and in medicine. Huge change. I mean, the revolution brought political change for the men. It brought political and social change for the women. They're empowered here. And that's fabulous. Gay people, LGBT, we earned the right to get married. It passed in the legislature in 2010. We were married immediately. We got coverage in all the newspapers, positive coverage, a 2-page spread in one of the major newspapers, because we're both well known here. And I don't say that because, we're so great. I say that because most people became positive about LGBT stuff. It's no big deal. In the cities. Now, in the countryside, in little villages, it can still be a problem, which is why for me, it's a non-issue. I've been out of the closet since '78. It means, I'm glad to be gay, but heterosexuals are fine. Everybody's fine. I don't care anymore. But I still talk about it because I know there are kids in the little villages who are being teased. Especially now with this anti-trans stuff, So I feel it's important to answer the questions if journalists talk to me. Once I was at a school and talking about my books, and the teacher came up to me afterwards, very apologetic. She said, "Well, you didn't talk about Alex or your relationship." And I went, "Well, no one asked me about it. I'm not going to introduce the topic." So LGBT, women, ecology, a real ecological mindset that we didn't have before. Personal hygiene. People obey the smoking rules. Nobody smokes in restaurants. Nobody smokes in hospitals. Impossible. We have a good medical system. It's being challenged at the moment because there's a lot of money going to the private hospitals. But I use the public hospitals. Alex had serious medical issues, had to be operated twice. He was in the hospital for 6 weeks, unfortunately, the worst 6 weeks of my life, probably, but he recovered really well. How much did his 2 operations in 6 weeks in the hospital cost us? 0.
Exactly.
And he had a great care, great doctor, led his team. Again, I'm gay. I'm used to people treating me like a second-class citizen because that's the America I grew up in. But this doctor and all the nurses, the first thing they would do when I would come in each day for a visit was say what was happening. "Richard, here's what's going on today. Alex is going to get antibiotics," because, they treated me like his husband, and that's who I am. But gay people still aren't used to that. So, sometimes I just burst into tears, seriously, because people were treating me like a human being, and Alex and I were treated with great care. And so healthcare, dentistry, I spoke about dentistry. Dentistry is first class now. Unfortunately, it's hard to get on the national healthcare system, so I pay.
Literacy.
Even just hygiene in the restaurants. You go to the bathroom in the restaurant, it's clean. COVID changed that a lot. There's soap there, in a little dispenser. In 1990, the bathrooms were like something from medieval, I don't even know, medieval Europe. It was just impossible. So all those wonderful things happened. And now, pretty suddenly, over the last 2 years, we seem to be sliding backwards. There's a party here called Chega, which means enough, that runs its campaigns on anti-immigrant feeling, particularly anti-gypsy feeling. There's a lot of Portuguese, although gypsies constitute less than 1% of the population. It's easy to get votes if you speak out about gypsies creating all the crime in Portugal. Totally untrue. So we have this new party, and they've got, I think, 88 seats in the parliament. It's not enough for a majority or anything close to that, but now they have a voice. And the media has given them a voice. Unfortunately, the media are owned by mostly conservative, wealthy people, and they were just happy to give Chega all the time they wanted. So we seem to be sliding backwards, a lot of anti-woke feeling, whatever that means, a lot of anti-trans, a lot of particularly anti-immigrant, blacks from Africa. I mean, Portugal had colonies in Africa, so obviously we have a lot of black people here. And so that's disappointing. I thought we were vaccinated against all that by the dictatorship and the revolution, but it turns out I was wrong.
Between my job as a realtor at Portugal Realty and hosting this podcast, life is pretty busy. But lately I've been receiving so many messages from people that want to know more about buying property here on Portugal's Silver Coast that I've got to do something about it. So starting now, for subscribers only, I'm offering up a 30-minute session per day. That's 5 30-minute sessions for a one-on-one meeting to talk about buying property here on Portugal's beautiful Silver Coast. This is for subscribers only. So please subscribe to book your session and get in touch with us through the links below via WhatsApp or email to book your session today. I'll be happy to speak to you. It's for subscribers only and it's completely free.
You've mentioned some of the really good things that have changed in your time here. And I find it quite fascinating because you've got this country that was stuck in a dictatorship and in a very short space of time,
absolutely,
got in front or got up to the level of other countries, and in some cases, way more liberal. You know, Portuguese attitude. I mean, you mentioned the gay thing. I mean, I remember an experience with a client of mine who were in a gay marriage, who bought a house in a countryside location. And the one day, the farm, I was with them because we were just checking on something with the house. And there was a farmer that lived next door. And he stopped in the street to speak to us because he knew that I could speak Portuguese. So he wanted me to translate because they were Belgian. They couldn't speak Portuguese. And he said, I just want you to translate for your friends. And I said, yeah, sure. And he goes, I just want them to know I don't understand this living arrangement, but I want them to know they're very welcome and I'm happy that they're my neighbors. And I told them and they started crying. And I'm like, It's a beautiful thing. So you look at this country that was so far behind in so many ways, but is now so far ahead in a lot of ways in the way that we treat each other. That's down to these people that we live with in this country. And what do you want for people listening who are looking at Portugal as a place to go, as a place to maybe escape, as a place to come and live? What do you want them to know about the Portuguese?
Well, first, you're right. I mean, the evolution in Portugal was extraordinary and extraordinarily quick. And the Portuguese themselves, you know, one thing that's different from America is your personal life is your personal life. That's what, you know, politicians here, when they run for office, they don't have to talk about their son who's on drugs or the divorce or, you know.
Are you talking about here in Portugal?
Here in Portugal.
Yeah.
Your personal life is respected. Yeah. And so like what you said about that neighbor who said, well, I really don't understand this way of living, but you know, you're really welcome here. That's the Portuguese attitude towards a lot of things. And I find that very healthy. Yeah. They don't invade your privacy. I meet people all the time who know me as an author and know Alex as a scientist. And they say, oh, I was in a restaurant with you 4 years ago, but I didn't have the courage to say anything. You know, they're quite discreet.
Yeah.
They're very, very friendly in public. You're on a street corner looking at a map. A Portuguese person will come up to you and say, do you need some help? You need directions to get to some out of the way village. They will help you. They're great about that.
Yeah.
They're,
yeah, I mean, it's interesting.
I just praise the Portuguese. They have this inferiority complex, in my
true.
opinion.
It's true.
You know, you'll meet journalists who will say, oh, nothing ever happens in Portugal. Or my students say, oh, I got to emigrate because this country is just so lit. But my opinion is exactly the opposite. You know, I've gotten to work with great Portuguese artists like Júlio Pomar, the painter, Paulo Rego, the painter, Paulo Abrunhosa, the singer. You know, so I've met the cream. And Alex knows these scientists. And those scientists have worked for the last 20 years to bring the level of research in Portugal up to international standards. Unbelievable. Yeah. Fantastic.
Yeah.
You know, there's this idea in the rest of Europe that the Portuguese don't work hard because we started so far back, you know, and our salaries are still so low compared to Germany and France. But we work really hard. That's a slander I don't buy. The Portuguese work really hard.
Can I
And
ask you a
so,
question? At what point? Because I'm also a Portuguese citizen now. I've been here
right.
16 years, so not as long as you. But I started referring to Portugal as we and us
Oh,
some
yeah.
time ago. When did you start doing that?
I think as soon as I got my citizenship, or maybe earlier, I became a citizen in 2002.
Okay.
But I started to think of us as we long before that
Yeah.
because I'm teaching all these young kids,
Yeah.
and they mean something to me.
Yeah.
And I love to see them do well. They're on TV as journalists now.
Yeah.
One of them is like does all the nature programs, like
Yeah.
the Attenborough of Portugal, and it gives me such pleasure
Amazing.
to see how he
Yeah.
succeeded. And so I felt like it's we, I'm
Yeah.
here teaching you guys,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it's a huge emotional investment for me.
Yeah.
And
The inferiority complex is interesting because I found this. I'll never forget, and I think I've shared the story before on the podcast, where I remember sitting at a barbecue that a friend of mine had invited me to with a whole bunch of friends, and we were sitting outside on this outdoor deck of this little farmhouse, and it was this like these sprawling hills, and the sun was setting, and we're sitting outside there, and at some stage, one of the guys said to me, like, where they were asking where you're from, where I'm from, and everything, and they said, why on earth would you move to Portugal? And I looked around, and I said, why wouldn't I? I mean, look at this. Like, we can't sit outside like this in South Africa. It's not safe enough. And I remember things like, going to a festa in a local village that I knew an acquaintance lived in, and the look on their faces when I arrived to their festa. I'm not like a famous person or anything, and I'm not a hype, but just the fact that this foreign guy has come to our little village for our festa meant the world to them. And I would say to them, but why are you so surprised? This is amazing. These things that you guys take for granted and that are just part of everyday life are things that are special and that we don't have in the rest of the world. And this is phenomenal.
Absolutely. Portugal's, I should mention Portugal's a beautiful country. It's like a mini California. We got rivers, we got mountains, we got, semi-arid desert, we got beaches, we got beautiful vineyards. Anything you want, we got in Portugal. And it's safe. It's a safe country. I should mention that because I've been to Brazil, which is quite dangerous,
and if your husband knows South Africa,
I mean, Joburg's changed completely. So
that's where I'm from.
He lived in Hillbrow, and it was safe, and women. I still know women who walk alone at night in Porto and Lisbon, and they don't feel fear. Crazy things can happen anywhere,
of course.
But people here are safe, and the Portuguese are pretty peaceful. You don't get into people don't insult you in public. I've had friends in America, women mostly, leaving bars, leaving restaurants, who are insulted by a group of young men about, the hump Trump stuff, MAG and women don't deserve rights and all that sort of stuff. That could never happen here. I mean,
it's interesting because you have this animosity in all these other parts of the world, and it's all based on politics and religion. And the Portuguese treat those two things as that's private. Like who you vote for and who you worship is none of my business. In general, I think unfortunately the publicity that Chega has got has made politics more of a public thing. I've never heard people discuss politics before as much as I have now in Portugal. So that's an unfortunate narrative that's created. But the discretion that they have and the respect for your privacy is quite interesting.
Alex, after his scientific career ended, he was elected to Parliament, and Parliament has changed completely. When he first went in, people weren't insulting each other, and now with Chega, insults all the time, and it's very disturbing for most Portuguese, I would say, that we've succumbed to this idea that if someone disagrees with you, has a different opinion, it's okay to call them names and insult them, and
which
that's
is not
very
disappointing.
disappointing.
It's not the Portuguese way.
No, it's definitely not the Portuguese way. Portuguese are very welcoming. It's still one thing I will say is the Portuguese have their own way of making friendships.
Yeah.
And if you don't know how to start a friendship, it can be difficult as a foreigner, which is why I think so many expats fall into the trap of living in an enclave of other expats. And, it's easy to fall in. I have nothing against that. If you want to just do that, that's great. But if you want to be part of Portuguese society and have Portuguese friends, you have to make a bigger effort. And you have to make an effort to understand their way of looking at you.
Yeah. Let's dig, Richard, if you don't mind, let's dig down on this a little bit, because I would like to just use a bit of your experience here, because we are seeing more than ever before Americans, but not just Americans, British, you've got your Scandinavian countries are getting taxed to high hell. People coming, and they're wanting to come to Portugal. And to be fair to, and for a lot of our listeners, they don't want to come here and be tourists. They want to come here and integrate. And one thing is, I see all of this marketing stuff that's on the internet now where, Algarve is the new Florida, Lisbon is the new California, Porto is the new San Diego. I saw one the other day, Marvilla is the new New Hampshire or something. And I'm just like, stop. Portugal is not America.
No.
And I think when we come here and we know that will come here knowing that it's not going to be where we've come from. It's something new. That's a step one. How did you make friends? Because I have my own theory how this happened. But just maybe from your perspective, how can people come here and make friends? What are the couple of steps? And we've covered language. We know if you can speak the language, that's going to take you a long way. Yeah. But what are some of the other things?
Yeah. Language is number one. Number two, I would say, is make the effort.
Yeah.
A lot of times we think, oh, I like that person, but maybe I shouldn't call.
Yeah.
Maybe I shouldn't, make the call.
Yeah.
Make the call. Propose something. Propose something specific. Hey, we're here. You want to have dinner either Thursday or Friday night. We would love to have dinner with you. Maybe you even want to come over. Invite people to your house. The Portuguese have this thing about inside and outside. A lot of times they don't invite us over because they think we're going to be judging them.
Yeah.
Judging the sofa and the paintings.
Yeah.
And we're not.
Yeah.
That's not part of the way I think, but that's the way they think.
Yeah.
So invite the Portuguese over. Invite them out to lunch, to dinner. If you're having a problem, with the Social Security or the healthcare system, talk to them. Invite them out for tea and say, I'm having this problem with Social Security. Can you help me?
Yeah.
They will be glad to help you.
Yeah.
So it requires more of an effort than normally we would make back home.
Yeah, and I think coming with that mindset of I'm an outsider. Whether I like it or not, I'm an outsider. And these people have been living here for their whole lives. They've got their social network set up.
Absolutely.
They've got their plans for Sunday and for Saturday and Monday nights. This is what they do. You need to somehow find your place in that. They will open up. But you've got to make a little bit more effort. I found inviting them to your home first off the bat didn't work because it was like, I don't know you.
No.
Meeting them for a coffee, cool. Then a lunch, almost like dating a woman or a man. Like start slow, just have a coffee, then go for a lunch, then go for movies.
Absolutely.
So it's that kind of thing.
Yeah, I think that's the absolute right approach, and it does work. It will take time. If you expect to get good friends in Portugal within 6 months, I'm sorry, that's an unreal expectation.
Yeah.
You will find good friends. They will be loyal friends, but it's going to take a little while. And
once you have them, they'll be friends for life.
They'll be friends for life.
You won't be able to get rid of them. Yeah.
They grew up here.
Yeah.
They have high school friends here. They have college friends here. So you're like this outside entity. Yeah. And if you understand that, then you realize why it takes time. They've got their whole network here already established.
Yeah. I think as well, another thing, and maybe you can, we spoke about the festa, the Portuguese festa. For me, it was, and I did it subconsciously, but I embraced their stuff. I embraced
Absolutely.
Choose a football team, you know, go to the festas, do the things that they're doing, because when they see you partaking in that, they're going, okay, you don't think what we do is stupid. And there's another connection point there, which I think is something quite
Yeah, I
important.
mean, they've got this amazing culture. I crochet, and the older women here are the most amazing crocheters in the world. They will make an entire bedspread. It'll take them 2 years of these very fine stitches.
It's
It's
insane.
an art. It's an art. And I've talked to these women, and they love it when I say, you're an artist. This isn't some crafty thing no, you're an artist.
Yeah.
And so ceramics, crochet, knitting, painting, get to know the Portuguese painters, get to know the Portuguese musicians and singers. If you like fado, go to the fado clubs. Talk to people about fado. Maybe you're into rap or some African kind of music. Do whatever you're into, engage with it, because Portugal has this amazing, very wide-ranging culture. People think Portugal is only one thing. That's another thing that's wonderful here. Each region is slightly different.
Yeah.
The kind of desserts they have in the Alentejo, east of Lisbon, are not what we eat here in the Minho. Okay, the soups are different. The ingredients are different.
Yeah.
People have local cuisine, local music, local folklore, local festas. And so you can be part of that local scene, and it's wonderful because it's not all homogenized.
Yeah. Yeah. And ask people where to eat. Ask a Portuguese.
Definitely.
Where
I always do that.
Where should I eat? Yeah, they love it.
Yeah, and if you can, get to know Portuguese food, because a lot of, now Lisbon and Porto have an enormous amount of international restaurants, and that's fabulous, because when I came here, there were none.
Yeah.
But you don't always have to eat Vietnamese and Thai. There's a lot of great Portuguese restaurants.
Yeah.
Learn Portuguese cuisine, learn baking, and you'll appreciate the country more, because cuisine is such a part of the way people nurture each other in Portugal.
Yes.
It's part
how they
of
show love.
I would say that Portugal is a very nurturing culture,
Yeah.
and cuisine is a big part of that.
Food is the Portuguese love language.
Yeah, they say I make fun of them because they say that there are 350 different ways to make codfish or something like that.
Yeah.
So I say that cod, is the Portuguese Kama Sutra. It's like 350 ways. And they have a good sense of humor too. It's not exactly American or British.
No.
But people here love to laugh and love to, joke around. And so don't feel, they may not get your sense of humor at first. Like, me, I'm very sarcastic from New York. And my students didn't understand my dry sense of humor at first.
Yeah.
And so that's okay. You'll figure it out as you go, but don't stop trying to be funny.
Yeah. I mean, we've got listeners who right now will be listening to us from the US. And they're thinking of making this move, or instead of US, put UK, or instead of UK, put Netherlands, or whoever it is. And they're thinking of making this move to Portugal. I'm always wary of people that want to substitute where they've come from with another place that doesn't work. So in what ways, just if you can briefly, how is, because you've come from America and you've seen how America's changed and everything, in what ways do people need to be aware Portugal is not America? And what should they be aware of? I know we've covered some, but just brief punchline.
I had two close friends from childhood move here like a year and a half ago, and they couldn't make it. They had to go back home. Part of it was, they lived on like a cobblestone street, and even that was difficult for them. I'm like, half of Europe is cobblestone streets, so it's not America. I would say you have to exhibit a lot of patience because, for instance, you want to get on a national healthcare system. That's really important because then you can go to all the public hospitals. If there's an emergency, you'll be seen by a doctor. All that's really, really essential, especially if you're of a certain age, and a lot of Americans coming are already retired. Well, that doesn't happen overnight. My friends expected, okay, we'll go to the, local healthcare center, we'll sign up, and tomorrow we'll be enrolled. it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
It can take up to, let's say, 6 months because we have a national healthcare system, but in some places we don't have enough doctors or facilities. So be patient. Taxes, signing up for cable television, everything that you need to do to be comfortable here may take a little time. You want to sign up for cable TV?
Yeah.
Okay, they're coming in 2 weeks. They're setting it up. Something went wrong with the TV. You have to learn who to call, what to say. Okay, you're a foreigner here. Don't start criticizing everybody and say, oh, Portugal, everything works so slow. There's so much bureaucracy. Nothing ever gets done. That's not a way to make friends and to adapt.
Yeah.
You're the foreigner here. Be patient. Be insistent. I'm not saying you can't be insistent. Insist on your rights. Insist on getting in the national healthcare system. But wait, okay? Every 2 months, write to them. That's what I did for my friends. Are they on the system yet? And finally, after 6 months, they were on the system. It worked, but it's not overnight. So,
Gotcha.
and as Americans, I find, particularly if we're from one of the big cities like I am, we're not patient. We don't like to wait on lines. Why does getting, anything new, you want a plumber? Well, why can't he come today? We're not good at that.
Yeah.
And so you have to recognize that plumber has 50 other customers he's had for 10 years.
Yeah.
And you're number 51, and you might have to wait a week. It's a pain in the neck, but you just wait. And the easiest way not to make friends is to become impatient and angry and start, a really negative conversation.
Yeah.
So, take a tranquilizer, have a glass of red wine, and tell yourself, it's not England, it's not America. Things are going to take a little time. I'm going to take time to adapt. It's very hard to adapt to a foreign culture. You need to be kind to yourself, and you need to tell yourself, not everything is going to work out perfectly. That's okay. I'm going to make it, and I'm going to be kind to other people and kind to myself. It sounds maybe like a cliche, but if you don't take that attitude, you're in for trouble.
Yeah, and if I can add to that, the Portuguese are, for us as foreigners, are incredibly patient.
Yeah,
they are so patient with us, and
amazing.
We need to give the same patience that we're afforded. I think it's important. Richard, I've had you for a while, but do you want to just tell us about some of the books that you've written and how people can follow and get hold of your books?
Okay. Well, they can always go to my website, which is www.zimler.com. I have a lot of books published in Portuguese and in English, and like 6 in French, some in Polish, some in Dutch. So look on your national online bookshop for my name. And the first big hit for me was The Last Kabbalist to Lisbon, as I mentioned, about a pogrom, a riot that occurred here, anti-Semitic, that nobody knew about it. So this book created something of a sensation, I have to say. And it's now been published in 23 different languages. So this book took me around the world. I did book tours in Australia. An Australian publisher paid for me to stay at hotels. I mean, like, how is this possible? I'm just a little pipsqueak. If you like Porto, one of my favorite books is Hunting Midnight, which is set in Porto in the beginning of the 19th century. The main character grows up there, and he's half Jewish. I write a lot of books about Judaism and Jewish culture because Portuguese Jewish history is fascinating. It's amazing. The Jews here were all converted in 1497, forcibly converted. And then if they wanted to stay, they went underground and became secret Jews. But many left, creating this huge Portuguese diaspora from Amsterdam all the way to Malaysia, to Brazil, to America. Anyway, talking too much about Jews.
No, that's okay.
Hunting Midnight, Portugal, early 19th century. It takes you from Porto to South Carolina, and eventually to New York. So I did a lot of research. It was great to research South Carolina and New York in the early 19th century. The Night Watchman, I didn't talk about it, but big changes started occurring in Portugal during the economic crisis. It's an interesting sociological phenomenon. 2007, 2008, young people started cafes, clothing shops, pop-up stores. So this book is about the economic and moral crisis, and it's a detective story, The Night Watchman. If you like detective stories, check this one out. My latest book in English is The Incandescent Threads. It's about two Holocaust survivors with Portuguese backgrounds in their family. And it's not depressing. It's not about the camps. It's about how they remake their lives after that. Okay. And the amazing, wonderful, strange, curious effects they have on the people who love them. And these two cousins, Benny and Shelley Zarco, are amazing people. And I loved writing this novel because it gave me a chance to talk about how Holocaust survivors, against their own wishes, sometimes passed on their trauma to their kids. And so the relationship between their kids and their wives and them, or husbands, became complex.
Yes.
And anyway, Benny and Shelley are wonderful. So The Incandescent Threads, if you want something like that. There's
Beautiful.
lots of other books, but whatever.
I'm going to send them to your site, and people can catch up. Richard, one more question, and a question that we ask all of our guests. Portugal, the simple life, why?
Really quickly, your life is your life wherever you are. In a certain sense, you bring all your best qualities and worst qualities wherever you are. So you learn that as you get older, like me. But Portugal is a calm place. It will give you a lot of support in the sense that you'll be safe here. You'll make friends. You'll eat great food. It's a small country, so you can travel anywhere and get hilltop villages or rugged mountains or beaches or canoeing or whatever you want. And people will leave you to be who you are. They're not going to try to change you into something else. And that, for me, at my age, is a huge relief. I can be me here. I can be the authentic person I want to be.
Beautiful.
And I think that's a luxury in 2025, and I'm glad to be here.
Wonderful. Yeah, I couldn't have said it better. Richard, thank you so much for being on the podcast. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you so much. Wonderful to see you and talk to you.
Likewise. And I'm going to let you call it.
And that's a wrap.
So thank you once again to our guests, and thank you to all of you for listening. Please subscribe, share with your friends, give us a thumbs up, and please leave a comment or a review. We always love to hear from you. Don't forget, Portugal The Simple Life also has a magazine, so download it. It's for free. We'll be back next week with a brand new episode, and as we say in Portugal, sejas bem-vindo. Welcome to The Simple Life.